Only a handful of people knew their locations. Nobody but special agents and captive terrorists could get inside these secret objects. A vast network enveloping the Middle East, North Africa and Eastern Europe. The CIA's secret prisons.
When I was president of Lithuania, the director of the State Security Department asked me for permission to build such prisons.
Journalists revealed the US government department's secret network after locating the prisons and identifying the airplanes that transported suspected terrorists. They also discovered that European officials helped create the clandestine operation.
According to official records, the plane landed in Warsaw, but in fact it landed here at Shimane.
The row over the secret prisons has divided Europe and triggered a political crisis in several countries.
One of the options open to us is to bury our heads in the sand, in the belief that nobody can see our behinds. Oh yes, they can.
How did the system work? Who was taken to those secret prisons and questioned? Which Eastern European partners helped the US intelligence agency? How was it possible to keep information about the covert prisons under the carpet for such a long time? Everything necessary to run a secret prison from September 2004 to November 2005 was here in this building. A Lithuanian parliamentary commission certainly has no doubt that US agents could have brought terrorist suspects here. Locals whose windows overlook this modest building with its red brickwork would even sometimes call the police.
We asked them what they were doing there. They said making money. Perhaps you'll get some of it, they said, grinning. Locals were not allowed to work there. Men asked for employment, but their requests were turned down. The guards spoke English. Once we saw an Afro-American man among them. He kicked a little dog. We wanted to give him a piece of our mind, but he never showed up again.
On several occasions, Antofillay residents saw trucks loaded with earth emerge from the gate and return with a cargo of cement. An investigation has revealed that a second perimeter was built inside the structure, a building within a building. It contained cells for inmates, rooms for interrogation, and living quarters for intelligence officers. Security was tight, but there were no Lithuanians among the guards.
All of us wanted to know what was going on there. At first we thought that they were making drugs or something. But much later, we learned from journalists what it really was.
Lithuanian journalists were the first to speak about the mysterious cottage near Vilnius. They had obtained papers relating to its ownership. As it turned out, the building belonged to a private riding school until 2004. Later it was sold to a company registered in Panama and Washington called Elite. The US firm owned the cottage until 2007, when it was then sold to several Lithuanian government bodies. Now the building belongs to the country's intelligence service.
Next, the story of secret prisons overseas being used by the CIA for its harsh interrogation of terror suspects.
The scandal spread around the world after a US TV news report claimed that Lithuania, a NATO member since 2004, had sheltered a CIA prison in its territory. Initially, Vilnius flatly refused to confirm the report.
CIA officers used harsh tactics.
I don't think that was possible. This inflated bubble will do Lithuania no good. It's a flight of wild fantasy. Sometimes people come to me to tell about something absolutely out of this world. Some believe little green people have come here from Mars. Are we supposed to hold an investigation in this case too? Let's put the matter to rest.
Antofillay in Lithuania and Stare Kekute in Poland are 500 kilometers apart, but they have much more in common than you might expect.
This is Stare Kekute. In the last decade, CIA secret prisons may have been located in the territory of the intelligence base, over there, beyond the lake.
The journalist Mariusz Kowalewski and others have put this quiet little village in Poland's northeast on the map. The Polish newspaper reporter wanted to find out whether there were secret CIA prisons in his country.
There was conclusive evidence in the papers from the border guard service that I obtained that Polish civilian, military and aviation services and border guards had been forging official papers to hush up information about the flights of CIA airplanes. According to the records, the airplanes landed in Warsaw, but in fact they landed here at Shimani.
These two spots on the map of Eastern Europe are key points in the network of illegal CIA prisons. Polish journalists claim that airplanes carrying terror suspects would fly from Afghanistan or Egypt to land near Shimoni airport. A car with blacked-out windows would drive up to the plane's steps to pick up the captives and hurriedly take them to the Polish intelligence service's ECtHR training base, 30 kilometers away.
How could Poland benefit from that? That's the question. Anyway, what kind of exclusive rights stood behind the use of the training base of the Polish intelligence service by an American service?
Whenever journalists ask people in ECtHR whether they know what went on behind this fence, they get the same blank answer.
Well, I don't know what to say. All I know is that I know nothing.
The Polish government stood its ground and didn't budge an inch. Warsaw denied all charges that it had allowed the US intelligence service to run illegal prisons on Polish territory.
Well, look, I've got absolutely nothing to say even to our journalists, let alone to those who have come from abroad.
By contrast, there were no attempts in Lithuania to extinguish the row. In fact, many political forces went out of their way to fuel it. As soon as the first reports concerning the suspicious building in Antyvili were broadcast, a parliamentary commission was set up to investigate. It made its conclusions public in December 2009.
Our laws prohibit us from disclosing cooperation details, but the main conclusions have been made public. There was an infrastructure. People came and went. There were opportunities for uncontrolled trafficking of something or somebody. The political leadership wasn't informed about what was going on in Lithuanian territory.
Lithuania's former president, Rolandas Paksas, believes the republic's top leaders must have known of the existence of the secret installations in Lithuania and of the suspicious-looking airplanes landing at Vilnius airport. Paksas lost his presidential post in 2004 after impeachment. He has no doubt he was forced out because of his relentless opposition to illegal CIA prisons being deployed in the country.
When I was president, the director of the State Security Department asked me to give permission for the construction of such prisons. Naturally, I said no. I testified before the Parliamentary Commission on the matter. The process that began after my refusal was largely the result of that decision.
The man named by the ex-president is Mieczysław Larinkus. In 2004, he was head of the Lithuanian State Security Department. When the row over Antyvili began to gain momentum, he was assigned to the diplomatic mission in Georgia, supposedly to get him out of the way.
The Commission must answer all questions. It has the authority. I'll tell the Commission about what I know. If there were no Commission, I would have answered your questions.
The chief Italian counterintelligence officer, Niccolo Polari, had virtually the same expression on his face during a court hearing on the abduction of Abu Omar in February 2003. At the time, the Egyptian was serving as an imam in the Milan mosque.
As I walked towards the Milan mosque, I noticed a white van and a red Fiat 127 standing by the roadside. A blue-eyed blonde man looking very much like an American got out of the car and approached me. He said he was from the police. He asked me to produce my papers. The man was speaking in Italian.
The Milan mosque imam was bundled into the car and taken to the US-Italian Aviano airbase. From there he was flown to Egypt, where he was charged with having contacts within Al-Qaeda. He was questioned for hours. Abu Omar said later that he had been tortured during his interrogation. However, American agents failed to prove any connection between the imam and extremists. Abu Omar was handed over to the Egyptians, but was only set free in 2007 at the height of the row over his abduction. The Abu Omar case was the first to lead to the trial of more than 20 CIA agents. This came about largely because of the imam's insistence and the publicity the case had received in the Italian press. Italy's judiciary found the agents guilty, but by that time, all the Americans involved in the illegal abduction of the Egyptian had left Europe. Only one officer from the Italian Special Services was imprisoned, and the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service, Niccolo Polari, resigned.
If General Polari had the opportunity to speak up, he'd say he was not involved in the case. General Polari issued a written statement saying he was against the abduction of Abu Omar. Regrettably, those documents are still a state secret. But when they are made public, it will become clear that Italy was against such actions.
Abu Omar's case only came to light as a result of sloppiness from US agents. They left behind several telltale traces during his abduction. Journalists and the judiciary obtained printouts of telephone calls, including those to CIA headquarters, as well as hotel receipts and other items. Human rights campaigners say scores of people shared Abu Omar's experience. More often than not, US special agents were able to steer clear of the public eye. Special flights took terror suspects to Afghanistan, North Africa, and Eastern Europe. Now that new facts of that secret cooperation have emerged, the governments of Poland, Lithuania, and Romania have found themselves in the focus of high-profile political rows. The prisons affair has cost some their political careers. Others have lost their lives. Mariola Przewalocka has been trying to find a job for a long time. A former manager at the small airport in Szymanów, 170 kilometers from the Polish capital, is at the center of a much publicized scandal. In an interview for Polish TV just over 3 years ago, Mariola said that in 2002 and 2003, airplanes hired by the CIA landed at the airport a total of 6 times.
They didn't keep to any particular schedule. They looked exactly like passenger flights. The navigation system had information about them. We were duty-bound to allow them to land. And that's what we did.
Przewalocka was forced to resign after her television appearance. But the Polish government simply ignored her scandalous revelations. And news of the country's leaders helping the Americans in their not altogether legal operations sparked much less scandal inside the country than it did abroad.
If they prove that there were such prisons in Poland, I'd say that will even be a good thing, because all that was done for the sake of Polish-American cooperation. The question, though, is how Poland will benefit from that.
Whether they existed or not is anyone's guess. But I'd be happy to know there were none.
Yes, I've heard about those prisons, but clearly that's how they want to distract Poles from issues that really matter.
Although the government chose to ignore the problem, several Polish journalists launched investigations of their own. Adam Krzykowski is among them. The reporter and editor of the TVP Info channel has gained access to the logs of incoming flights at Szymanów Airport. He has no doubt that Poland was one of the main participants in the CIA secret prisons project.
It all came to light by chance, after we got hold of several secret documents. Significantly, they had not been registered at Szymanów Airport. It followed from the records that CIA airplanes had landed in Polish territory. The flights had what was described as government status. This means that the country's leaders must have known about them.
Adam investigated the affair with Mariusz Kowalewski from the Polish newspaper. They visited Stary Kakuta several times.
This is the airport at Shimano right here. Over there you can see Nowe Kikury, and this is what you're looking for, Stare Kikury, over here.
As our crew filmed Kovalovsky's interview, we ourselves came under the spotlight. Security guards inside a passing cross-country vehicle meticulously filmed what we were doing.
Gentlemen, your papers, please.
Security there is still tight, even though it's thought the secret prisons program in Eastern Europe was terminated 5 years ago. Marusz is certain that without the revelations by Przewodowska, all evidence pointing to Poland's underground cooperation with the United States would still be nothing but circumstantial. US Special Services used very smart methods to disguise their operations to transport terror suspects. The fact that they used private airplanes meant that they didn't have to report to the official departments of the various countries as they passed through their airspace. A military aircraft needs many permits before crossing a border, but a civilian plane is different. You need far less authorization. The airplanes used, mostly light Gulfstreams, were hired from front organizations. The most graphic example is that of the Premier Executive Company, which was uncovered by American journalists. An email address was the only information the firm was ready to divulge. The company used only 2 airplanes, which belonged to Stephen Express, a firm registered in Tennessee at a non-existent address. The company was later handed over to Devon Holding and Leasing, a firm employing just 1 person, who was a lawyer. One of the airports where those planes landed was the one where Mariola Przewodowska was a manager.
Airport staff serviced the airplanes. They inspected and fueled them, but there was no customs examination. All that was surrounded by secrecy. Cars with tinted windows would drive up to the airplanes, but there was no way of knowing who was inside.
Vytautas Pociūnas, a Lithuanian counterintelligence officer, investigated the payment of a considerable amount of money that the US State Department had reportedly given to the opposition in Belarus. Vytautas discovered that the money never reached Minsk. Instead, it went on to the Baltic countries. In fact, it could have been used to fund the illegal prisons. The man leading the parliamentary inquiry into his death maintains that Pociūnas uncovered the truth.
There is no denying that some fine points show that it might well have happened.
The agent's persistence cost him his career and later his life. Pociūnas had been posted to the Lithuanian embassy in neighboring Belarus, but he continued his investigation there, meeting with American diplomats. But late in the summer of 2006, the counterintelligence officer's body was found near a hotel in the city of Brest in Belarus. Officially, Pociūnas's death was recorded as an accident, saying he fell out of an upper floor window. But other explanations for his death cropped up later, during a heated debate in the Lithuanian parliament over the secret CIA prisons. The anti-Vilay crisis became a useful tool for political infighting.
We have 2 options open to us. One is to bury our heads in the sand in the belief that nobody can see our behinds. Yes, they can. We can't say that if we found no chained captive, don't pester us anymore. The other option is to make an objective assessment of the situation, without trying to figure out mathematically how many Muhammadovs or Ibrahimos were here. We must be frank about whether we were a truly independent state, where somebody can do as they like.
It's vital for the current president, Dalia Grybauskaite, to vindicate her country in European eyes. To that end, she needs to make a symbolic political sacrifice. Grybauskaite is demanding the return from the embassy in Georgia of Mieczysław Rinkus, the ex-head of the State Security Department who was thought to be in charge of the construction of the anti-Vilay prison.
It's important for Lithuania to face its mistakes with an open mind. What is even more important is to make conclusions about whether a government department can be a state within the state, and whether 2 or 3 state security officials can decide the country's destiny without regard for the law and in excess of their powers. I want to have answers to those questions.
The Lithuanian journalist and political scientist Artūras Račas feels that the United States, the #1 country in NATO, deployed its secret prisons in Eastern Europe for more than just tactical reasons. The new members of the Atlantic Alliance demonstrated their loyalty to the United States by harboring covert CIA installations. But it's paid no dividends. Such mutually disadvantageous cooperation is unlikely in the future.
In the future, nobody will have even a possibility to do what happened. I mean that nobody will have enough power to order other state institutions not to obey the law. Nobody will have the power to do some really very important decisions without knowledge of the parliament and of the president.
Mariola Przewlocka, the facilities manager at Szymanski Airport in Poland, where CIA-rented airplanes landed, was forced to resign following her scandalous TV interview and her testimony before the European Parliament. She has still not found another job. The reporter Marusz Kowalewski became famous as a result of his investigation. He's a well-known figure in the country, and his articles appear in many European publications. Rolandas Paksas, the ex-Lithuanian president who refused to give permission to construct a secret prison, now leads an opposition party. He maintains that his refusal to allow the deployment of CIA prisons on Lithuanian territory cost him his post, but will benefit him at the next parliamentary election. Vilnius is a capital, but it's also a compact city. The parliament building is in the main street. The heated debate over the secret prisons has not subsided to this day. The building nearby contained state archives, but only 20 years ago, these walls inspired terror. At that time, it housed the KGB's Lithuanian branch. A secret prison of the omnipotent special service existed in the basement.
And now I want you to show the first place for arrested people. So, please, over. You can see two small rooms. And these rooms were called boxes. So the prisoner could spend here a few hours while officer examined their documents. The second place for them, search room. Here. So things like belts, shoelaces could be taken from them.
This ominous place has since been turned into a museum. Tickets cost €2. A brief tour sheds light on the lives of inmates and the interrogation practices involved in what was then called the limited use of force and psychological pressure.
So here you can see two the same rooms, and the prisoner could stand on the round platform in the middle, or he could stand working in cold water, and during winter time it could be only ice. And there were some prisoners who spent here even 3 days, and who spent about 5 days.
The young Lithuanians who visit the museum regard it as a symbol of the distant past in their country's history. They find it incredible that it was only recently that a secret prison existed 20 kilometers from Vilnius. And they're not convinced that the records of what really happened in the small town of Antiville will be declassified anytime soon, keeping the truth under wraps.